that kind of naturally grew out of an opportunity that came along when I was in Chicago. I was at WBBM FM first in Chicago for 3 years, and then I moved over to the RKO station, WFYR, in Chicago, which was doing adult contemporary, kind of up-tempo adult contemporary, but they were also playing oldies. So it was a combination format. And on the weekends, the Saturday night shift had basically a zero and had a goose egg. And we were just playing format, Barry Manilow and whatever else was on the radio back then. This would be late 70s, early 80s. And I recommended to the general manager, program director, and general manager, I said, we can't do any worse than, just playing straight format on Saturday night. Why don't we do a Baby Boomers oldies show? I didn't necessarily think of it as a request show. At first, I thought of it just as a thing to showcase top 40 60s music, basically. And it didn't meet with that receptive an audience, but a couple of months later, the PD, who was Dave Martin at the time, he launched the show for Saturday night, and I can't remember if it was called, I think it was simply called Saturday Night Oldies. And it was essentially what my proposal was about, and we all did, in addition to our Monday through Friday shifts, everybody on that station had to do a weekend shift as well. So he did it for about, I think, maybe a month or 6 weeks, and I was doing the Saturday afternoon shift. And he said, somebody said, you take it. I'm tired of this Saturday night show. So I picked it up, and this was about April, May 1980. And within 2 rating books, we had like a 26 or 27 share. And it very quickly came to the attention, being an RKO-owned radio station, they had just launched the RKO radio networks. And it quickly came to the attention of Dan Griffin in New York, who was the programming VP. And I remember getting a phone call from him one afternoon. He introduced himself and said, do you think this little Chicago thing you're doing would work for a national audience? And I said, well, yeah. I said, maybe I'll play a few less Buckingham's records or a few less Crying Shames records or American Breed or Shadows of Night or whatever the local 60s top 40 stuff was for Chicago. But I said, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the audience is going to be as passionate about it coast to coast as they would be in the Windy City. So he said, well, we'll think about it and get back to you. And they kicked it around and we made a deal. And so in January of 82, we started backhauling the Chicago show via satellite to New York, where they put their national commercials in and sent it out on satellite to the national audience. And so that's how the show went for a couple of years. So, my timeline on it is I took over in April, May of 1980. January of 82, it went network, and they, for some reason, couldn't get a trademark on Saturday Night Oldies, so they changed the name of the show to Solid Gold Saturday Night, which they could get a trademark on. So when we went from the local Chicago show to the first network, it switched names, and we had a new jingle package and everything, and never really missed a beat. I mean, the show just was like a house on fire at that point. And so 2 years later, January of 84, I left WFYR in Chicago and moved to New York to do the show at the RKO studios and to launch my Countdown show. And so that's how that kind of evolved.